Hello, and welcome to Advanced Trains. I'm your host, Blockhead. I'm going to cover the Advanced Trains mod for Minetest. I'll be taking you step by step from the very basics of laying your first track through to advanced concepts like LuaATC. Here's the layout we'll be making today. It's got 3 trains, 3 stations, 2 sets of points. It's got 6 section breaks, dividing it up into 4 separate sections. And it's all got automatic signalling and automatic trains. I'll show you how to do it, but before we get started, let's go to the drawing board. So we want a railway from A to B via C. Let's start by drawing a straight line from A to B. Now we want multiple trains, and we want them to be able to pass at C. So let's draw a loop of track at C. Now we want stations at A, C, and B. Let's draw our stations with nice yellow edges on them. As I said, we want multiple trains on the system, and to do that we need to divide our track into several sections. Let's cut it up just like this. Now why have I divided them into 3 pieces at the junction? There's a very simple reason, is that in railway design you must not let trains stop at a junction. If a train comes from A and stops here on the junction, then a train wanting to depart C simply can't enter that section. Whereas if A must go all the way through to C, then anything can depart C. So we need signals to tell each of our trains when they can depart each station. So here we are in Minetest. Now before I even build a railway, what I've done is I've built a layer of ballast, just like a real railway. In a real railway, the ballast retains the track, it keeps vegetation off, it lets water seep through, and it's just really nice to leave ballast in your railways and not just build straight on dirt. I mean, it just looks terrible. So I've saved us the time and built this layer of ballast for us ahead of time. Let's start by building a straight track. We have our bumpers, technically called buffers, but Advanced Trade calls them bumpers. We have our straight track, and our straight track, it just places. It's not very difficult to place straight track. So occasionally it will slip out of your hands, so to speak. So we've got from A to B, from the west, as you can see on the mini-map, to the east. It's just like A and B in our plan. Now we need to place the loop of track around our station. Advanced Trains makes it very easy to place curved tracks. You just have to place them diagonally apart from each other, and Advanced Trains will automatically make them diagonal. They come in 30-degree increments, and actually I want a shallower curve here. That's a 30-degree curve, a 2 to 1 curve. Let's continue that. Another block. A sharper curve, and then into the station. Through the station, and again we want a curve from here, and we have it. See the magic of Advanced Trains. Now for the last step of installing our track, we need to install the points, the switches, the turnouts. We need to get our track worker tool out which I have here. Now we left click to change the rail type. We don't want a curve, we want points. We need to rotate it around, so we'll right click several times. Oh, points are facing the wrong way. Thankfully, Advtrains has two different ways that they can face. Now we repeat the same process. And at the other end, just like before, it's got the curve. No, it's missing this rail here. Yep. We've installed the points. So now our trains can go fully in a loop around the station. Speaking of stations, it's time to install our first station. Advtrains comes with platform blocks. We place the platform blocks just one block away from where the track is, and the platform actually serves a functional purpose. So when you stand on the edge of a platform and a train arrives at the station, you'll automatically enter the train, which actually means you can get on trains while you're AFK, although you'd better hope you don't end up at the wrong station when you come back. Now I'm going to go ahead and accelerate the footage while I build the rest of our platforms. So now we've actually finished our stations and our tracks, and we can operate them with manual trains on a line of sight basis, so that if we see another train, we can stop. And that's how we can maintain safety. But we want safe automatic trains. We want automatic signalling systems. So we need to introduce the track circuit brake, the TCB. Now the track circuit is a real electrical system used to detect trains. When the axles of a train travel over the tracks, they actually short between these two rails. And that short can actually be used for block detection, so we know that the train is in this section. And Advtrains allows us to simply set up track circuit brakes, points where track circuits break, form several blocks, several circuits, and know that we have trains in those sections. I place one of them on each side of the junction, just like I did in the planning stage. I'll do the same on the other side. Now it's important to remember that it's actually completely arbitrary where you place your TCBs. TCBs are assigned manually, so as you can read in the UI, this is an unconfigured track circuit brake. We need to right click to assign it somewhere. When we right click, it gives us a message, punch the rail we want to assign it to. We want to assign it here, we punch it here. We can do the same for our other TCBs. Now it's kind of arbitrary how close to the actual points you place them. You may want the track circuits to actually clear sooner or later. You may want to place your TCBs hidden in the ground. These are just for demonstration purposes. Now the next step after we assign our TCBs is to create track sections. So we right click on a TCB. When you right click on it, this UI opens. Now you can see at side A we have no interlocking, end of interlocking. Side B, end of interlocking. What is interlocking? Interlocking is a system for making sure that trains can't make conflicting movements. How do we do that? We have signals that are attached to routes, and routes which occupy track sections. And so we have our interlocked track sections that we have to create. So it's as easy as clicking create. But don't rush ahead and create your sections too early. I recommend you actually place all of your TCBs, and you're happy with how the TCBs are placed, and then you start creating sections. Because dissolving sections is really painful to do, especially if you've got a long railway to take care of. But now that we're happy with our sections, we can go ahead and create sections everywhere. Everywhere. We'll actually see that they get random ID assigned to them. And oh dear, 650, 640, 717. Why is side? Oh no, why have we got? We've got track sections in our database all signed, don't we? Obvious cut is obvious. Okay, so this actually perfectly demonstrates what I said about dissolving sections being horrible. So if I go to create this interlock track section, looks fine, right? We can see our little UI has popped up around all of our TCBs that I'll explain in a minute. Right? Right? Well, if we actually click show track section, it will show that section that we've just created. Obviously, I've gone ahead and completed the whole tutorial ahead of time, and I'm redoing it right in front of you. And I have a fandom section here that hasn't been deleted properly because deleting sections is really hard. So let's see if we actually debug this. It's between these 2 points. So the last time I did this, there must have been a TCB assigned to this square. So maybe if I make a new TCB, assign it to that section. Oop. You can't assign TCBs with track in your hands. Having track in your hand will mess a lot of UI interaction up, so don't do that. If we assign it here, ooh, aborted, but then successfully configured TCB. Advanced trains is fun. Okay, so no, we have section 135,618 in common between them. That's good, because that actually means that we can dissolve that section. Then we can dissolve this section, and remove this TCB. And dissolve this section. And finally, hopefully, create Interlock track section on side A. And it has our 3 TCBs assigned to it. That's good news. Okay, with that out of the road, let me explain a bit of what I just did. Or rather, how I found it easier to do. So, get out of this UI. Now, every time you open a TCB, you'll get this little doodad appear here. You might be wondering, like, what is that? It just looks like a big blob. It's rather pixely. So this is actually a pixely A, this is actually a pixely B, and they're written both ways around, so you can read them both ways around. And what do the A and the B mean? They actually refer to side A and side B of the TCB. So when you're having trouble reconciling what's side A, what's side B inside the TCB UI, look at what's on the track. Now you can get actually multiple of these to appear at once. Each TCB you click will make one appear. They may disappear at some point in the future. It looks like I've still got one over there. And you can just punch them away. No worries. Let me clean all of these up. But another useful feature of the UI is actually that when you click on a section, show section in the UI, all of the TCBs will get their little UIs show up in the game world. And so that can be really useful to quickly spot what this section is, and maybe if, you know, like that fandom section I just deleted was still there, the fact that it's there, that's how I spotted that fandom section. Okay, so we have our sections set up. That's good, that's a base layer for us to deal with. What do we need next? Well, signals. You'll see I've actually left these little gravel patches here for our signals to go in. So let's get our signals. You can use these signals that come with the mod. Let me do a search with Unified UI here, which is inventory, which is a great mod you should install. You have the KS signal set, also comes with advanced chains these days. You also have the wall-mounted signals. These are very popular on LinuxWorks server I actually play. As a subway type of signal, they're very useful inside tunnels or on gantries that you might have. But we'll go with the basic signals today. All we need for this signaling system is stop and go, danger and proceed signals. Although the KS signals can actually give speed indications. And this is a shunting signal, which we won't cover in this tutorial. Stop, go. Okay, it's good that we can manually operate this signal if we had a signalman, but we actually want an automatic system. How can we assign this signal to function somehow? Well, what we want it to do is govern entering a certain section, and possibly continuing for some time onward. So what we actually need to do, it has to do with sections, right? So we right click on a TCB, go after side B, and we need to assign a signal to that section. And now when we right click on the signal, whoa, we get our advanced signaling UI. So what is our signaling UI going to let us do? It's going to let us set up routes. As I said, we want to clear trains to enter a certain section and possibly continue for some time, that is, possibly through multiple sections. So we'll want to create a new route. Now when we click that button, we'll enter route programming mode, and we get this little doodad route, it says, which will appear at the TCB we start at. And then we'll get end route, which also can mean continue route, on the TCBs that are adjacent to it. Now we want not to do anything with the TCB that we start at, but actually go to the TCB that we want to finish at, or continue to. But TCBs and sections aren't the only thing that are controlled in route setting mode. If we change this points here to diverge, and then hit it, that will hold those points that way around while our route is set. Otherwise, we would end up going straight and probably colliding into another train. So always set all of your points along the way. Now, when you want to enter this platform, we need to enter this section. So we hit this. Now, we're not finished with making our route here. Remember, we can't let trains stop across junctions. So we have to advance to our next route section. Thankfully, we don't have to walk all the way over to that TCB. In fact, in many cases that could be, I don't know, a kilometre away. We have a little handy shortcut here for straight sections. Finish route at end of next section. So when we hit that, the next TCB, which is over beyond the platform, will be the end of the route. And that will mean that we have to go and stop at this platform and can't stop on this junction. Names. Always name everything appropriately. What are we doing here? We are entering middle station. And we hit the save route button. Okay. Are we done setting up our routes? Not entirely. Not entirely. If we go back to our signal and click on our route, then we can see set route, show and edit appear. Set route will actually set the route manually, but again we want automatic route setting. Automatic route setting, ARS. How can we actually configure that? We don't want it to disable it, we don't want to keep it enabled. We want to go to the edit pane. We can change the name, so if you give it a bad name to start with, you can fix it later. It shows us the TCBs involved, which sections they enter, the section names, which way the points are locked, but this can be very hard to read. Thankfully, you can click the Show button, and that will show you the same doodads that appear when you're in root programming mode, except it's a read view, not a write view. And so, unfortunately it only appears for a limited amount of time, and that can be really annoying. You might need teleportation to actually get fast enough to the other end of your routes. So it's a good way of visualizing things, not the be all and end all. But let's go back to edit. We want to set up automatic route setting rules. Now, this is a very actually basic system, and we won't cover line codes or similar in this basic tutorial. All we need to do is put a star in here. And star means everything, catch-all, wildcard. So if we enter a star there and save and go back, then the name has turned green. Green will be applied as a style to routes which have a global rule, a star rule. And so when you look at a route, a random route out in the wild, green, well this must be the route that's the default if I don't have any special configuration set on my train. And all of our trains will treat the same for the purpose of this tutorial. Okay, so from here on out, we have to repeat the same for the signal that lets us leave the western station at the other end. And we have to also set up the signals to allow trains to depart the middle station. But first, always name everything appropriately. Always. Let's give this signal a name. Let's call this East Station Departure. Now we also want to name our track sections. Advanced Trains gives us random section numbers that are totally meaningless. So we should go show track section and edit the section name. Which side is this? This is side A. This is the station, so I'm going to name this East Station. Similarly, I'm going to name this junction section, so I'm going to call that East Points or East Junction. Let me just accelerate the footage while I create all of the sections and name them appropriately. Okay, there was another phantom section and I had to sort that out, so I decided to cut rather than accelerate the footage. Now let's step through what we have in our sections. West Station on side B, West Junction on side A. These two are also part of West Junction, but they're also part of Middle Station South and Middle Station North. And lastly, we need to set up our other signals. I'll set up a departure signal from the south end of the platform here, but for brevity I think I'll skip the next two signals. So the last thing we did was go from a single track section to a double track section. We're going to go from a double track section to a single track section here. Is there much difference? Not that much actually. Now, what have I forgotten to tell you? When we set up our first signal, we forgot to mention one crucial point about signals. Signals have to be associated with a particular node. Just like TCBs have to be associated with a particular section of track, signals have to be associated with a particular section of track as well. The point where trains will obey them. This is called the influence point. So we can see the influence point of a signal, even before we set it up. We hold the interact key, which I believe is set to E by default. I have it set to F so that I can have inventory on an E. But if we hold interact and hit set, we look in the direction of travel, so this direction, and that will set the influence point, so that when trains approach from this direction, this signal will stop them. But this isn't our usual workflow. What we want to do usually is set up our TCBs and sections, assign a signal, and it will ask us to set an influence point the first time that we assign it. So, side A, assign to this signal. Now it will ask us to set an influence point. So we'll set the influence point once again. Now we have an assigned signal with an influence point. We can set our route. So let's create a new route, making sure to set our points always. We want to proceed out of the station, so we want to enter this junction section, and we want to go to the end of the track. Now there's no TCB beyond this, but all that we need to do is hit the TCB and ask it to finish the route at the end of the next section. Now why are we not asking it to finish the route here? Because it's the end of the line and you couldn't possibly finish at a next section, surely. Actually, there's a special case that you can end at the end of interlocking. Now this can let trains exit interlocked sections of track, maybe go to other kinds of train control systems or just manually operated railways, but it also lets you act as if there were one more TCB at the very end of the track, so that you can safely end the route. Now if we were to finish the route here, of course we would have the same problem of stopping across the junction. Then a train would wait here, and a train would be trying to depart the station, and something would be parked in its road. So let's go ahead and finish the route at the end of the next section. The route leads to non-interlocked area. Now that may be a bit of a warning flag in general principles when you're working on main lines and sections that you may expect to be interlocked, but here that's okay. So we want to call this Enter West Station. There's our route. Okay, so now that we've created all of the signals that will let us go in one direction, it's a simple process to go ahead and do the same for the other direction. You simply choose West Junction to assign a signal to, and assign that signal. However, I've got a leftover influence point here. I'm going to need to move that one node backward so that a train isn't allowed to move into this section without obeying this signal. So I'm going to go to the influence point button down here and hit move and move it back to here. Okay. It will still continue to show the old influence point for reference. You can knock all of them away. Now we'll set up our new route, similar to how we left the east station. So we always set our points. We go to the next section. Okay. Again, this is a straight ahead section. You can see our next TCP over there. So we can cheat and just finish route at end of next section. And we'll call that Enter Middle Station. Except you'll see that, well, I hope, you have Enter Middle Station on this signal, you have Enter Middle Station on this signal. Routes don't have to have globally unique names, but what you might find helpful is to set globally unique names, so that if you ever get errors up in chat, which you certainly might if things go wrong, you'll actually know where to look for debug. That's why I'm stressing it's so important to name all of your signals and routes. Having said that, let me name this signal West Station Departure. We're going to edit this route, add the automatic route setting global rule, save that. And now whenever a train approaches this signal, that is the route that will be automatically set. We have West Station Departure signal. We're going to rename that Intermiddle Station from West. Now, have I completed this signal correctly? No, I haven't. I hope you were paying attention. If you were, let me know with a comment below. So we're going to call this Middle Station Departure West. Long name, but I'm just trying to make it globally unique. And I've also forgot to set the route manually, but to allow the route to be set automatically. In the absence of an automatic rule, obviously trains will just wait for a signal to be set manually by someone. Now let's set up our final signal. So let's go ahead and find the correct section, East Junction, assign the signal, check that the influence point is set correctly, which it already is. It's been left over. The signal is removed and replaced in the exact same position. You'll actually find that the influence points restore to where they were. So let's create our route. You need to always set our routes. You need to set these straight. In real life, if the points were set like this and a train ran over it, a train would actually derail. Thankfully, that isn't modelled in advanced trains. I think that would lead to far too many derailments. Set your points, always, and then finish route at end of next section. Enter East Station, save route. Now remember, you're not finished with the route until you have set the global rule. Easy as pie. Okay, so what have we got so far? Quick recap. We have a straight track, we have a curved track, we have platforms for our trains to stop at, we have TCBs creating our sections, we have signals letting trains travel through sections in their routes. Now, how does the train know where to stop? How will an automatic train know where to stop? Well, advanced trains can't be programmed internally. They have to be programmed with special tracks. And we're going to use one of the newer features of advanced trains that isn't very well documented or covered. That's actually lineautomation. This submod of advanced trains actually gives us these station tracks, station/stop rail. You'll find, I think, that they don't have any crafting recipe, so if you're playing on multiplayer, for example on LinuxWorks, you'll have to ask a moderator or someone who can spawn items to give you these. I suppose that would work fine on a creative server. And what these do is indicate where station stops are, where a train will stop at a station. They don't, semantically, we call them stations. They could be used for other things like stopping and reversing while going up a mountain, but they let you set text. Okay, what does the UI look like? Okay, it gives you a station code, because in real life, most stations are assigned a code by the railway operator, and in this game it also provides a good use to us. There's us to name the station, which will actually appear on board our trains. It lets us select which side the doors will open, on the left of the train, the right, or closed. In case, again, you don't want to have a station stop, but you want something like a reversing going up the mountain. You can leave the doors closed so that passengers aren't supposed to get off. And we can choose whether to go straight ahead or reverse out of the station. We have a track number. We have a number of seconds that the train will stop for. And we have ours rules, just like in our signals, about which trains will stop here. Again, we'll be using the star rule. Now there's a bit of a trick to setting these things up, but it's quite a bit easier than a basic ATC tracks, which I might introduce in a later video. So first we start by assigning a station code. We can call this East. It can contain uppercase letters, other characters may be available. On Linux forks, a lot of station codes start with a capital and then 2 letters. Here we're just going to call this East. There's no real need to arbitrarily use a small number of characters unless you really like 2-letter codes, I suppose. We have a station name that will actually appear. So let's call this East End. We already want it to stop on the right. We want it to reverse. And let's number this track 1. Often these are called platform if you live in the English speaking world. In German I think they're called Gleis for track. But you can have multiple tracks at the same station. And ours will start. Everything stops here. Here's the trick. Yeah, the trick is when you set up a station, don't set all of these until you've saved the station code and name. Because if it's new, it'll have to create it. Okay, so why have we set a station code if we can just set a station name? Well, remember, we can have multiple tracks at the same station. Let's go ahead and set this to reverse, track number 1, and start. Everything stops here. Save that. Okay, so have a station code with the code East. If we create another station track and enter East, it automatically retrieves the station name. So this saves us from copy pasting it, get updated by just editing one track. So if we go East Enders, then it's the same between both. But that of course is a very silly name. So we're going to keep it at East End. This could be track 2, or it could be track 3A. It doesn't have to be a number. You can make it stop on a different side, and that's okay because that's bound to that specific track. But we only want one track at this station. Where we do want multiple tracks, however, is at our next station, our middle station. Let's go ahead and put the station track here. We'll call this middle station. Doors open on the right. Thankfully it works out that they all open on the right around here. This is track number 1. Everything stops here for 10 seconds as the default. That's a pretty sensible default. Now let's go over to the north side of the platform. This is also middle station. Track number 2 this time. Everything stops here. And finally, let's go over to our west end. Now do note that the orientation is important, so the little arrow here will point in the way that you're facing when you place the track. If a train runs over a stop track the other way, then it won't stop. So if I wanted to have trains go both ways at this stop, I would have to have 2 separate station tracks, which is sensible to do anyway because the train stops on the station track, and unless it's a short train which stops in the middle of the platform, a longer platform than this, then you'll probably want it to stop at one end of the platform. So you want it to point away from the platform. But that's silly because this is the end of the railway. So let's call this west end, track number 1, everything stops here and then reverses after 10 seconds. Whew, okay, now we've done all the work we need to do to get automatic trains running up and down our line. So let's pull the train out of our pocket. Here's one I prepared earlier. And it's a crash course on driving trains. So, trains are spawned with their doors closed, which means that I can still get on them because I have privileges, but the ordinary player won't be able to get on them. However, you can always escape a train by shift right clicking, and get off forced will appear here if you like the privileges. And so you might need to force the doors. Let's get into the driver's stands, and we have manual operation by default. Oh, here I am in third person. It's usually pretty good to go to third person. F7 is the bind for that, in case you don't know. Good to go to third person before driving or looking around trains. You can see that the signal's already turned green for us. It's close enough. We're close enough to the influence point that we can reserve a route. How do you operate a train? Well, you don't even need to know how to stop it, because it's going to stop itself automatically. So let's just hit W for a little bit. Don't hold it down. Although actually, if we hold it down, there is a safety override feature built into the interlocking system and the station tracks. So you can see we're at middle station. The train's still going forward at 0 km per hour, and it waited for 10 seconds before leaving. We can see it counting down. More recently, the timer has been added. Oh dear, what have I done? Oh, so here's what I've done. I've set the influence point of this signal the other way around. So despite the fact that I can't see this signal, although sight doesn't matter to an automatic system, it is requesting a route into this section. However, this section is, if we ask it to automatically route set, occupied. Because the route from this signal is the route to enter here. So the train has gone and conflicted with itself. It's safe. We just haven't done our job properly. So let's go ahead and fix the influence point on this the right way around. And so when the train approaches from this direction only will it ask the signal to let it through. Now we can re-enable automatic route setting. It can be very useful to disable it temporarily. Don't forget to turn it back on. Now, about the doors. Here's where the doors are closed. I think it must have been a graphical glitch that the subway's wagon spawned with the doors looking closed but actually open. So I can shift right click to get on here. And again, doors closed, can't get off. But if I hold shift while I right click, I can force getting off. So let's get in the driver's stand and continue on our merry way. Now we do have a safety override. Again, it was introduced with the interlocking system, so you can't run off tracks. You just can't. If you do find a way to run off tracks, report that to the authorities with due process, but don't use it for acts of terrorism, please. So here we are at middle station. Again, I'm just going to wait for 10 seconds. Now we've got a green signal. Look how the points are set, diverging. As we go across here and stop and wait for 10 seconds at west ends, we'll see that the train doesn't request the route until it's facing the right direction and close enough to the signal, and then the points will change. Blam! Points just changed. Okay, so we have one train, but I mean, we could have just done away with signals if we didn't want more than one train. So let's actually get some more trains in here. And this is actually incredibly easy to do. So all we need to do is just wait for this to exit, clear that route, and get another train in here. Get in it, into the driver's stand, and drive it onto the station track. This thing is going to continue on its merry way. It's not going to block this junction. There's nothing's there. So you have two trains merrily passing each other. Okay, so what have we got? We've got 4 sections. We have 4 trains. Unfortunately that will deadlock it. But we can add one more train. This signal will go green. Signals tend to be requested from a decent way away. Now let's look behind us and see that although this has departed the station, it's still waiting at the red for this to depart this station. And this is waiting on this, and so on. The system will tend to self-stabilize. What has happened to this? No, it wasn't ready to depart the station, that's all. Okay, so we have 3 trains hopefully chugging away, giving way to each other. It's a bit slower now that we have 3 trains running. And now it's going to stop and reach a state that we call deadlock. Now, we've avoided deadlock at the junctions, but what we haven't avoided is deadlock by filling all of our sections. And that's kind of an unavoidable problem except by building more tracks. Or shorter sections. But we've filled the capacity of this line. And well, that's it. That's how to go from the very basics in advanced trains to automated subway system. You can simply follow the same pattern and repeat a double tracked section all the way through to more double tracked stations, more double tracked stations, and so on. I think it's very appropriate that the sun's setting, don't you? But wait, there's more. I've only shown you one way to set up a train system. I've shown you the interlocking system, which is very good for crash avoidance, and I've shown you the line automation, that is the station tracks system. What I haven't explained, but I do intend to complete in future videos, is an explanation of the ATC systems. And I do mean systems because there are 2 in advanced trains. There are our basic ATC trains and our LuaAutomation. ATL ATC, LuaATC, it's got many names. Our LuaAutomation systems. So these actually send individual commands to our trains. And let me know if you want a video about the ATC systems. Now, a video's already been done about the basic ATC system, but I'm more than happy to cover it again if people think I could cover it well. I think I could. And the LuaATC system I don't believe has been covered on YouTube. I'm willing to be proven wrong. But that can be very useful because that can let you set custom text, that can let you set line numbers automatically to appear on our trains. So, expect those videos to follow as well. Stay tuned. Take care.